past year or so, there has been a tremendous focus on use of hydrogen for producing iron, to have a reduction of the iron using hydrogen instead of using coal, using carbon as a reductant. And there have been a number of projects announced and a lot of discussions regarding this. I think it's fair to take a step back and look at what is the current situation when it comes to the supply of hydrogen, and what are the costs to use hydrogen here. In practical terms, we can say that hydrogen is several times more expensive today than using carbon as a reductant. And we can also note that there is absolutely no technology in place in operation today to service this huge amounts of hydrogen that would be necessary to replace a blast furnace. The biggest PEM electrolyzer currently being built is 24 megawatt, that is built in Germany by us at Linde in a place called Leuna. And to build hydrogen DRI production at a reasonable scale, we need something that is probably 50 times more. Accordingly, this will take time. Another factor related to this is of course, the supply of green power that would be required. So I think we should notice that this is a limiting factor going forward. Next. So in summary, I try to describe what we think is a reasonable scenario going forward, where we have today 95% of the iron production in the world based on coal. I think it's fair to say that this is a transition journey over a couple of decades. Probably in year 2050, we will still see a good number of blast furnaces around. To what an extent we will see a conversion to other technologies depends on if they are viable or not. And of course, it's largely determined on the upstream supply and infrastructure, for example, of green power, but also of the DR pellets and so on, and government intervention in terms of taxes and so on that impacts this. We will see also, of course, more virgin material that could be coal-based that is going into the electric arc furnaces. We see an increased trade of pig iron from for example, from Brazil or so into Europe, where the cost of CO2 emissions is quite high, and some of this might also be used in blast furnaces. I mention and repeat that the stove oxygen enrichment and flue gas recirculation is very interesting way to reduce the carbon footprint, to take out coke oven gas, for example, or reduce the carbon footprint by maybe 30%. And that is, and the other thing is the use of hot oxygen technology to produce syngas from biomass or coke oven gas, either into a blast furnace or into a DRI production.
So one of the things that we do hear a lot is, this is really interesting about coal. The idea that, coal is going away, we should be focusing on other things. Well, certainly in the United States and Europe, coal as a fuel for electricity generation is on the downslide. But looking at Asia, they're still building a lot of coal-fired power plants. These plants are built with a 50 to 60-year lifespan. Many of them are less than 10 to 20 years old, so they're going to operate for decades. So this technology is certainly very viable around the globe. If you think about, global carbon emissions, you do need a global solution. It doesn't matter if we deploy that on every coal plant in the United States that's left or in Europe. It's just simply we don't have a large number of plants anymore. But also, this technology is very transferable. It falls in that post-combustion technology category. And, you know, a lot of industrial applications are not going away anytime soon. Certainly steel manufacturing, you know, cement production are two that come to mind. And, you know, so what we develop at a coal-fired power plant in Wyoming may have larger applications just beyond the utility and power industry down the road. So that's why this is really important. And looking at sort of some of the post-combustion projects in the United States, this is a snapshot from the U.S. Department of Energy. There's a website on the bottom there that is updated as new projects come online. I will tell you that within Wyoming, I know of many more projects that are not included on this. This gives you an idea of the different types of projects that are out there. You know, a large number of them are on coal plants. The vast majority of them are post-combustion. You know, you see some of the different technologies that are being used, but, you know, certainly, you know, there are 89 different projects, 50, so roughly 30 of them are, or 40 of them are, you know, on industrial applications. So a lot of opportunity above and beyond just the power sector for what we're doing. And we would welcome, you know, a relationship or working with those and the steel making and metals and manufacturing world to see if there's a technology solution that would make sense. Next slide. I think that's a political statement as opposed to a rational sort of policy plan. You know, if the focus is on carbon emissions, focus on carbon emissions, and if a fossil-based system, you know, be it a steel, you know, facility, a coal-fired power plant, you name it, can meet certain emission criteria, it should be allowed to go forward. You know, what's really interesting is, you know, several years ago, California, you know, they had a no fossil energy goal. Well, as their requirements for decarbonization increased, they realized that they couldn't get there without, you know, carbon capture CCS, because you do need the base load power, you do need, you know, dispatchable power that simply, you know, wind, solar, renewable types cannot meet. And so they very quietly changed their goals from no fossil energy to a low carbon standard. And we're seeing that happen as well. So, you know, every credible, I guess, energy forecast, whether it's, you know, the UN, you know, climate change group or Department of Energy, really doesn't foresee major decarbonization goals globally without carbon capture sequestration.
We have a well-established technologies and industry for DR production since many decades. Today we have a DRI production in natural gas based in the world that is somewhere probably reaching 80 million tons a year, and I definitely think it's a very feasible route to go, and I could imagine that we will see more of DRI production, particularly in areas where cheap natural gas is available. That DRI is then being briquetted into hot briquetted iron and then transported to other areas. So both used directly on site into an electric arc furnace, but also an increased trade of this material as a good intermediate solution to create decarbonization. Definitely, I agree.